Today we're going to do two things. We're going to change the radiator and also the thermostat, which is located in the thermostat housing underneath here on a 2005 Hyundai Elantra. It's the GT model. Shouldn't make a difference other than the fact that my car is a manual transmission, which means that it does not need any cooler lines for the transmission fluid, because I have gearbox fluid in here. As you can see, there are no pipes that go into the radiator to cool that oil. However, the new radiator that I have is a generic one. It's made by Spectra. It's going to be replacing this factory radiator. It will have cooling lines which will be blocked off anyway, so I won't be using those two additional lines. Other than that, this job is fairly simple. Just to proceed, whether you were going to do a radiator fluid change or you were going to replace your thermostat, you'd have to do this basic steps. You'd have to remove 4 screws from the top, remove the plastic housing, then you would remove the bolt here and remove 3 different pins, plastic pins from here to remove this out of the way. Once you've done this, you are a step closer to finding where the thermostat is located. It's basically in here. We're going to take this plastic cover off. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and remove this plastic airbox cover. So we're going to have to open up a few screws and loosen and take and disconnect some of the few plugs. Basically, we're going to loosen this screw here so that this unit along with this unit comes off. So basically flip these pins here, remove that screw, this will come out, you pull the air filter out, there will be 3 bolts on the bottom housing, remove that, this area here will open up. Once that opens up, you've got to remove this, and the plug underneath. This will come off. These are attached to the cap that go on top of the thermostat housing. Once that area opens up, then you'll be able to gain access to 2 of the screws there and then be able to remove the thermostat. To get to the radiator, we're basically going to remove this and this bolt. This is what holds the radiator in place. Once that comes off, then we should be able to, I believe we need to remove these bolts after they come off, but I'll show you that along the way. That's it for now. So basically I've loosened up the screw here. I am now going to unplug this, take this unit off, remove that hose, pry this off, turn this upside down, unhook this harness, and this is removed. The next thing will be to remove the air filter and open up these 3 bolts right here. Pause. So now that I've loosened these 3 bolts, I pull them out, dump them right in here. This is then pulled outwards. You can see that this part here goes into an opening right here, which is your air intake. So the air comes in through here, goes around underneath, comes out here, so you just pull this out and upwards. Once this is removed, we're going to have to remove the connectors that are attached to this plastic housing. So basically you press on this gray part, pull it out, there's a tab in here, you push in on and that comes out. There is a pin in here that needs to be removed, so once that pin comes out, you can then go ahead and pull this apart. And this here also has a tab that gets pulled to take apart, but however last time I did this I broke the connector, so I just taped it up to hold it in place, and I'll show you what that connector looks like. Basically there is a tab in here that you press and then you basically pull that apart. So now that we've got this, we're going to pull this plastic housing apart, and now we've exposed the two bolts, the two nuts I mean, that we need to remove. Once this comes off, the thermostat will be sitting right in here. That's it for now. Step to removing the radiator is going to be to drain the fluid from the radiator. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the plastic flap that you see at the bottom of the engine right here. There are, I think, 3 bolts that you get access to from underneath the car. We'll remove that, and then you can see that down here they basically have a pinch clamp on the hose. You take a pliers, pull that in, pull it back, and then we should be able to basically just pull that hose off by twisting and prying it because it's been on for such a long time. What we're going to do is we're going to catch all of the fluid for the radiator, from the radiator, the coolant, into one of these green bins. To be environmentally friendly, you want to be able to catch all the fluid that you can and then dispose of it correctly at one of your municipal or city dump locations. Basically, we're just going to stick this underneath the car in this area once we've removed that, so that any water that comes out of the radiator goes onto the frame and falls in that area will go back into the pan, and anything that comes out of here that's attached to the thermostat housing right here will go into the pan as well by dumping in front of the frame down below. You can see I've got the hose pulled off, and I have the fluid draining out. I'm collecting it in the pan below, and once that stops flowing, I'm going to then pull the upper radiator clamp off and let it fall as well into the pan below. Once I get that done, then I will go ahead and disconnect the fan wires, one here, one there. Once I get that done, then I will basically undo this screw, the screw on the opposite side right there, and then take these 2 mounting bolts off, and then that radiator should pull out with the fan assembly on it. Swap the fan assembly onto the new radiator, and we're set to go. Alright, so now I'm going to, while the coolant is coming out of the hoses, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the upper portion of the radiator. So basically I open up these 2 bolts, remove the 2 mounting brackets. This frees up the radiator, but however the condenser is attached, so we're going to remove 2 bolts right here. This disengages the radiator from both from the condenser in the front. We're gonna then go ahead and pull this switch connection, or I should say fan plug. There's a tab in here that you press and pull. That comes off. We're gonna do the same thing to this side. We're gonna push and pull. We're gonna then go ahead and disconnect the reservoir tank hose. We pull that off, pull it out of its housing. At the end of all of this, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this. I'm going to remove the bottle as well, clean that out, make sure there's no residue in there, and then I'm going to attempt to maybe put some water down here once I've opened this up, because I want to replace as much of the fluid as I can, and then hopefully have new coolant. I've got like 136,000 miles. I think it's about time for me to change the coolant in the car as well. Another way to go ahead and draining the radiator is to remove the drain plug that is installed in one of these radiators, and that will be right here. But that's maybe a little cleaner way, but however you're still going to have to disengage the hoses, so doing it all in one shot, I don't know, I find it a little easier, but you could drain it from here first and then get whatever liquids left in the hose at that point. In the process of taking out the radiator, I've also had to undo 2 of these bolts. I've removed the lower bolt so that the bracket falls forward, or it can fall backwards beyond the radiator. In order to pull a radiator out, there are 2 more bolts. I'll show you on the new radiator. There are 2 bolts, one on this side and one on that side, that holds this radiator to the condenser coil in the front for the air conditioning system. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the fan shroud, separate that. That will give us access to the 1 bolt here, and then the other bolt on the other side as well. So that's the new plan here. Alright, so I've removed 1, 2, 3 bolts. Once you do that, the fan basically falls backwards. Then you just lift it out. This would be my one side. This would be the second fan. And now I have access to opening up the 2 bolts. साफ कर दो बस. So basically, pull the radiator forward, and it will come right out. When you pull the radiator out, you want to tilt it towards the bottom opening so that you get all the fluid out. You don't want to pull the radiator out like I did and then have fluid fly all over the place, and while you're trying to whip it back into place again, you're throwing fluid everywhere else that you didn't do it while you're pulling it out. So let it fall out, drain out, straighten out the radiator, put it down here, put the plug back in so nothing else can come out from the bottom anymore, and you're good to go. So basically I'm going to open up these 2 bolts right in here. Use as many extensions as possible to get down there. You could use a shorter wrench, but what's going to end up happening is while you're trying to while you're trying to either open or tighten, you're going to end up hitting your coil and unnecessarily bending some of these cooling fins and damaging it. So the best thing is just to be more careful than being careful when you're spinning the wrench, and just have it outside so it's a lot easier to do whatever you need to get those 2 bolts out so you can clean out the water reservoir. Now that I've pulled this out, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this. I'm going to have to figure out this comes out, and this bottle is now ready to be emptied out and cleaned out for new fluid. Now I've removed the 2 nuts from here. I'm going to slowly pry this open. I'm holding a funnel down below so that I can direct the water into the pan below. That comes off like that. And that's it. So what I'm going to do now is get this thing cleaned up here so that I have a clean surface for the new gasket to sit on, and I'll be good to go. What I'm doing here is introducing water into the hose at this location, and then the old coolant is coming out of the car. And so what this will do is it'll end up leaving clean water in the block while flushing all of the radiator fluid from the vehicle. This way, when I go ahead and refill the fluid, I will put full concentrated fluid in there, a certain amount of it, so that it compensates for the full one-on-one water that's inside the block. When replacing the thermostat with a OEM thermostat, you will have to find how to place the thermostat, because if you look at a thermostat that's original, you will see that there is a small nib on it, and that nib fits into a certain location that you can find right here. If it was not an OEM thermostat that you were replacing it with, then you would have no problems putting it in. This thermostat could be placed in any one type of an orientation, but here it's going to have to fall in at this location. So once that's set, then you go ahead and place the gasket on top, push the gasket in, and then you're ready to go ahead and install the thermostat housing on top of it. And that's it. And then you go ahead and bolt it up. While you're bolting it up, make sure that you're cranking each side equally. I know there's some foot torque that you've got to torque these, that you have to torque these bolts nuts to. I don't know what they are, but I'm pretty much going to make them snug and tight, and then that's it. One other thing that I've done is I've gone ahead and cleaned up the aluminum housing here because of the coolant. It reacts with aluminum and causes all this other garbage to form, so I went ahead and cleaned it up, made sure it wasn't pitted or otherwise it'd start leaking from this location. This was the worst case scenario that I had. It wasn't really a pit in a darkened area. That's about it. So I went ahead and cleaned it out, made sure my hoses were right, and no cracks, no nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and install the two nuts back on, and then I am done changing out the thermostat. So basically now what I've done is I've gone in and installed the water bottle, the cleaned out water bottle. I haven't filled it out. That will be my last step, and then we're on to the next thing after this, and that is the installation of the radiator. What I've got here is the Spectra CU2387 radiator that I picked up from Napa. It has basically your top inlet port. It's got the opening for your radiator cover. It's got the lower radiator hose outlet, and it has, for those people who have automatic cars, these are your cooler lines for your automatic transmission fluid. Since I've got a manual, I will not be using these two pipes, so therefore I'm just going to leave them as is and not make any connections. Basically I picked up this one from Napa. It's their 3053 model number. I picked it up for, I believe, 96 or 97 bucks. If you look around on Amazon, you'd be able to find this for like 68 bucks, but you'd have to know that you've got a cracked radiator, or you want to be replacing your radiator soon, because it'll take a few days to get to you. If you can wait, the better it is. If not, then you're going to be out of your luck. You're going to have to pick one up. Pretty much Napa and some of the other local auto parts stores like AutoZone or those, some of them do actually carry the Spectra. They price match one another all the time, so just find the best deal you can get and then go ahead and pick it up from them. So this is what it is. Again, these two ports are for automatic transmission fluid, which I don't have. I'm not going to use. and I'll get it in there and then show you the pictures afterwards. Once I have gotten the radiator in place, I went ahead and installed the fan on this side, on the right side first, and then you install the fan on the left side because it sits into the fan on the right hand side. Once you get that done, plug in the wires here, plug in the wire here, get your wires housed in, make sure you lock in all three of these bolts that tie in the fans to the radiator. Make sure all your mounting bolts are all snug. These two right here. I went ahead and installed the two arms that hold the radiator at the top, one on this side and one on this side. Make sure they're all snug and tight. I've got the hose connected that takes you back to the reservoir bottle. I've got the upper radiator hose connected, and now I'm going to go ahead and connect the lower radiator hose. So I've gone ahead and now installed the lower radiator hose. Now I'm going to push this housing cover back on, get my lower plug installed, get my upper plug installed. I'm going to go ahead and make the connection between here and here. Install this, and then I'm going to tape this up since this is broken, but I've got one pin to install for this connection, and once I get that in, I am all done. From this point on, I'm going to go ahead and get the housing back in, and then we'll take you to the next step from that. Alright, so now I've got these 3 bolts installed, tightened. I'm going to go ahead and install the air filter. I'm going to come along here and push this in, get this small tube attached here, grab the sensor, get that hooked in, get that plugged in. I have this installed. And that's it. Now I'm going to get ready to go ahead and start putting in the coolant.